The cold wind bit at her skin as she huddled beneath a tattered blanket on the cracked sidewalk of downtown Chicago. At just 7 years old, Lila Harper had already learned that the world could be cruel, that people often looked away when faced with suffering, and that survival depended on sharp eyes, faster feet, and a heart that refused to give in. Her stomach growled, a constant reminder that food was scarce, and the cardboard box she had claimed as her home offered little warmth against the autumn chill. Her days blurred into a monotony of scavenging for scraps, dodging indifferent passers-by, and hiding from police officers who didn't understand that she had nowhere else to go. Lila's mother had vanished when she was just 3, leaving her in the care of an abusive aunt who had no interest in nurturing a child. By the age of 6, Lila had run away, wandering the streets alone, learning to navigate the harsh realities of life on the edge. Despite the hardship, there was something in her that refused to be broken, a quiet determination that burned behind her wide, wary eyes. She watched the world with careful attention, noting the kindness of strangers, the generosity of a hot dog vendor who occasionally slipped her a sandwich, and the cruelty of those who turned their faces and pretended she didn't exist. Every interaction was a lesson. Every gesture a story of the world she had been forced to inhabit. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline and the city lights flickered on, Lila found herself drawn to a small alley near a luxury apartment complex. She had learned that these areas often yielded better scraps, discarded meals, forgotten wallets, or someone's momentary lapse in attention. That night she spotted something unusual. A small, worn notebook lying on the ground, its leather cover scuffed but intact. Curiosity piqued. She picked it up, brushing away the dust. Inside were pages filled with sketches, faces, buildings, intricate patterns, and occasional notes in careful handwriting. She had never seen anything like it. The artistry, the precision, the attention to detail. It was mesmerizing. Lila ran her fingers over the pages, imagining the hands that had created these drawings. The notebook felt like a treasure, a window into a life so different from her own. Suddenly, a voice startled her. "Hey, that's mine!" Lila jumped, clutching the notebook to her chest. A young man, perhaps in his early 20s, was running toward her, his expression a mixture of panic and anger. He was impeccably dressed, far too clean and well-fed to be someone from the street. I found it," Lila stammered, shrinking back. "It's very important to me," he said, softer now, noticing her trembling. "Please, I need it back." Something in his eyes, a flicker of desperation perhaps, made Lila hesitate. She had learned to fight, to run, to protect what little she had. But she also recognized vulnerability when she saw it. After a tense moment, she held out the notebook. "Here," she whispered. The man took it, relief flooding his features. "Thank you," he said earnestly. "You have no idea how much this means to me." Lila watched him leave, disappearing into the night, but she couldn't shake a strange feeling, a spark of connection, fleeting but real. That night, curled up in her cardboard shelter, she thought about the notebook, about the man, and about a world that seemed both cruel and unexpectedly full of wonder. The following weeks brought more encounters with the man, whose name she learned was Elliot Reed, a young entrepreneur trying to launch his own design company. He began leaving small packages near her usual spots, a warm sandwich, a blanket, sometimes a notebook or a sketchbook, always with a note of encouragement. Lila didn't trust easily, but the consistency of his kindness began to chip away at the walls she had built around herself. One rainy afternoon, Elliot found her shivering under a highway overpass. He offered her a ride, a meal, and most importantly, conversation. For the first time in years, Lila spoke openly, revealing fragments of her life, her fears, and her dreams. She didn't realize it yet, but this was the turning point, a chance meeting that would gradually alter the trajectory of her life. Elliot saw something in her that she had long forgotten in herself: intelligence, resilience, creativity. He began teaching her small things, basic accounting, the structure of running a business, and even the fundamentals of design, which she absorbed with an astonishing eagerness. Lila's mind, honed by years of survival on the streets, proved to be a remarkable asset. She quickly learned to manage small tasks, understand patterns, and see opportunities where others saw only obstacles. Months turned into years. Lila's small contributions to Elliot's fledgling business were noticed, her ideas increasingly sought after. She moved from the streets to a modest apartment Elliot helped her secure, and slowly, the world expanded beyond survival. Yet she never forgot the nights of hunger, the cold concrete, and the people who, like her, had nowhere to turn. By the time she was 16, Lila Harper had become indispensable to Elliot's growing company, but she had ambitions beyond simply helping him succeed. She wanted to create something of her own, a venture that could change her life, while also lifting others who had been trapped in the cycle of poverty. And then the opportunity arrived, a chance encounter with an investor, a daring pitch she made at a youth entrepreneurship conference, and a gamble that could either make or break her. Lila, seasoned by the hardships of the streets and empowered by the mentorship she had received, took the leap. The risk paid off in ways that even she couldn't have imagined. By the time she turned 21, Lila Harper was a millionaire. But despite the wealth, the luxury, and the recognition, she remained grounded. Her first instinct was never to indulge in opulence. It was to help those still struggling on the streets, to provide shelter, education, and opportunity to anyone who had been denied a chance at life. Her empire, now vast, was built not only on ambition, but on empathy, resilience, and a memory of nights spent shivering in the cold. Every decision she made, every investment carried the silent mantra of her childhood: no one should be left behind. And yet, even with all she had accomplished, Lila knew the journey was far from over. The streets still called to her, reminding her of the girl she once was, and of the millions of others whose lives had yet to be touched by hope. The apartment that Elliot helped Lila move into was modest, but to her it felt like a palace. The walls didn't echo with the footsteps of strangers, the floor was dry, and there was warmth that no cardboard box on the streets had ever offered. Yet, despite the comfort, she often found herself staring out the window at the city below, remembering the nights she had spent alone, the cold biting into her bones, and the faces of other children who had no one. Her days became a rhythm of learning and working. Elliot treated her not as a charity case, but as a mentee, guiding her in finance, design, and negotiation. Lila absorbed everything with a voracious appetite, her past life giving her a sharp instinct for spotting opportunities and avoiding pitfalls. She had an uncanny ability to see patterns, to predict outcomes, and to navigate the complexities of business, skills honed on the streets where survival depended on awareness and adaptability. Yet adolescence brought its own turbulence. Lila struggled with the lingering mistrust that had been ingrained in her during her early years. It was not easy to believe in kindness when it had so often been a prelude to betrayal. Friends at school, though curious about her story, sometimes looked at her with pity or suspicion. Lila had to learn the delicate art of balancing humility with confidence, of showing gratitude without appearing weak. One day, while volunteering at a community center with other youths, Lila encountered a group of children who reminded her painfully of herself. They were thin, unkempt, and wary, eyes darting with the same distrust that she had carried for years. It was in that moment, seeing their silent desperation, that she realized her mission extended beyond personal success. Wealth was meaningless if it did not carry the power to transform lives. With Elliot's guidance, she began small initiatives, after-school programs, tutoring sessions, and emergency food drives. At first, it was humble work, funded with small contributions from her own pocket. But Lila was relentless. She understood that real change required more than charity. It required empowerment. She focused on education, mentorship, and practical skills, teaching children and teenagers how to break free from the cycles that had trapped them. Meanwhile, her own ambitions grew. By 17, Lila had developed a keen interest in social entrepreneurship, a way to combine business acumen with social impact. She pitched her ideas tirelessly, facing skepticism, rejection, and occasional ridicule. Investors often saw her youth and modest background as liabilities, but Lila's experiences on the streets had given her resilience unmatched by anyone in the boardroom. She learned to turn rejection into strategy, criticism into refinement. It was during this period that she met Margaret Sullivan, a philanthropist and venture capitalist known for taking risks on unconventional ideas. Margaret saw something extraordinary in Lila, a combination of intelligence, empathy, and unshakable determination. Under Margaret's mentorship, Lila refined her business model, learning to articulate a vision that married profitability with social good. The breakthrough came when Lila launched her first social enterprise, a small company providing affordable housing solutions for the homeless, funded by innovative partnerships with private investors and local governments. Her pitch was bold, her numbers impeccable, and her story compelling. Investors were captivated, not just by the potential profits, but by the authenticity and urgency she conveyed. The first project was modest, 20 tiny homes built in a derelict lot near the outskirts of Chicago. The project was a logistical nightmare, fraught with bureaucratic red tape, funding shortages, and construction delays. But Lila tackled each problem with the same tenacity that had carried her through years on the streets. She negotiated tirelessly, often sacrificing sleep and personal comfort to ensure the project's completion. When the first residents moved in, Lila stood among them, seeing faces lit with hope for the first time in years. There was a mother holding a newborn, a teenager clutching a worn backpack, an elderly man whose hands trembled with gratitude. Lila realized then that her wealth, her ambition, and her struggles had all converged to create this moment of transformation. The tears in their eyes mirrored the hardship she had endured, but also the possibility of a new beginning. The media took notice. Stories of a young woman who had risen from the streets to build a thriving social enterprise spread across newspapers, television, and online platforms. Lila's personal life remained private, but her mission became public, inspiring countless others to contribute, volunteer, and believe in the power of human resilience. But fame and wealth brought challenges of their own. Some questioned her motives, others tried to exploit her trust, and she learned that generosity could be manipulated. It was a harsh lesson in maintaining integrity while navigating a world that often prioritized greed over compassion. Yet Lila remained steadfast, drawing strength from the memory of nights spent alone, from the faces of those still struggling, and from the mentors who had believed in her when no one else would. By 18, Lila's enterprise had expanded beyond Chicago. She partnered with organizations in New York, Los Angeles, and smaller cities across the country. She established programs that provided not just shelter, but education, vocational training, and mentorship. Her life was a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and on-site visits. Yet every night when she returned to her modest apartment, she remembered the streets, the hunger, and the cold, and it kept her grounded. Then came the moment that would define her path to becoming a millionaire. A major investor, impressed by her track record and vision, offered a significant stake in her company, providing both capital and connections to scale operations nationally. It was a gamble, one that could either solidify her mission or compromise her values. But Lila, now tempered by years of struggle and experience, navigated the deal with intelligence and integrity. She retained control of her company's vision while leveraging the investment to expand rapidly. By the age of 21, Lila Harper had become a millionaire. The money was not the goal, it was a tool, a means to amplify her impact. She invested in technology to improve housing solutions, launched scholarship programs, and created a foundation dedicated to empowering street children and marginalized communities. Her success was a testament not only to her talent, but to her resilience, empathy, and unyielding dedication to others. Yet despite all her achievements, Lila never forgot the streets. She returned to them often, walking anonymously among the people she had once been, listening to their stories and understanding their needs. Her wealth gave her power, but her heart kept her connected to the world she had come from, a world she refused to abandon.